Okay. Seeing as we have a quorum and I have a hard stop at 10, if you don't mind, we're gonna get this underway. So this is the April 12, 2023 regularly scheduled meeting of the Cohasset Affordable Housing Trust. It is 8:46 a.m. Let's call the meeting to order by way of a roll call vote. Rob Henry, welcome back.
Thank you. Rob Henry present.
David Pfeiffer.
David Pfeiffer present.
Cindy Matheson.
Cindy Matheson here.
Tom Mead.
Tom Mead is present.
Ted Carr.
Present.
Steve Gomer here. And currently Diane Kennedy is not with us. Not here at the meeting. All right. First order of business is public comment for items not on the agenda. Do we have public comment today, Cassandra?
Not that aren't on the agenda.
Okay, no one in the queue, in other words.
Not that I'm aware of. We do have a miscellaneous iPhone, but that could be Christine just taking minutes.
I'm sorry?
There is someone who's just on an iPhone. There's no name, but it could just be Christine Fairford taking minutes for you.
Okay, if the user listening in labeled as iPhone could simply identify themselves, we'd appreciate it. Currently you're on mute. Okay, well, fair enough.
Sorry, folks. Chris Davis joining in and listening in. I was just on mute. My apologies.
Okay, no, not a problem, Chris. Chris, do you have, are you intending to give any public comment since we're on that item on the agenda?
None. Just listening in.
Okay, thank you. All right. The first item on the first otherwise scheduled item on the agenda is the inclusionary zoning bylaw draft, which was distributed to you last week by Cassandra. A little background on this. Tom Callahan, who's chairman of the planning board, but more just as importantly on this item, is also working on the bylaw. I'm afraid I don't remember the title of the committee. Maybe you know it, Cassandra, but I think it's the
Zoning Bylaw Committee.
Zoning Bylaw Committee. Had examined the inclusionary zoning bylaw after a review by Judge Cutler, who is the former Supreme Justice of the Land Court. Her comments were taken into account, and the result of that is an initial draft of the rewriting of this particular bylaw. I'd spoken with Mr. Callahan, proposing that we would offer our thoughts on this, specifically with respect to payment in lieu. And he turned around and said, well, I'll tell you what, here's the draft. Why don't you take a look at it and get back to me with comments? Now, the goal here is to do exactly that, provide our comments, not to write the bylaw per se. But I would very much appreciate your input overall. So the topic at hand for today is simply to introduce this to you and ask that over the next week you read it, think about it, think about how you might want to refine it with respect to our own objectives. And I'll give you an example of as to where that might apply. The way that Mr. Callahan had looked at this draft with respect to the comments that Judge Cutler had made was to clear up the ambiguity and specifically in order of priority set down within the zoning bylaw the goal of inclusionary zoning on site, secondarily inclusionary zoning offsite or local housing units offsite, and the third would be payment in lieu, and it begins to specify what that might be. And conversation that I'd had with Tom indicated to him that payment in lieu is not necessarily a bad item, especially if the town has a plan larger than an individual developer might be able to execute on their own. Someone that, for instance, that is charged with creating 4 units because of their development can be helpful, but if the town itself or if the trust is looking for funding because there's a larger parcel in town that can be developed, that would be an area where that priority could take over, because our objectives are to create units, and ideally, we're not doing that 1 and 2 at a time. So there's an example of how we might look at it. Again, I'm not looking for your comments at the moment. I'd rather have you think about it and pull them together. And I think the best way to do that is to put your thoughts on paper, route it back to Cassandra. Let's review them and present a compilation of those thoughts to Tom once we have everybody's input. Tom Mead.
Oh, the last we had talked about this, I thought our attorney was going to, one of the thoughts we had ourselves was to have our attorney maybe provide a synopsis of what some other towns have done. Understanding that you're not looking for comments now. I have my thoughts on the proposal. If I were to suggest any improvements, I'd be looking for the background that we had talked about soliciting from our attorneys. So any idea, did we make an actual ask of them for that, or where did that land?
We've asked, but again, we're well behind on some delivery by Karis, and that this is one of them. I'm not proposing, by the way, this bylaw amendment is not headed anywhere immediately. I don't believe this would go before town meeting, before special town meeting this fall. So we have some time, but what I'm looking for your thoughts to begin with. We do want to re-engage our own counsel on it. And distill much of what we have. Paul, go ahead, Paul Kears.
Sure. The chairman of the Affordable Housing Steering Committee wasn't aware the subject matter was going to be on the agenda, but I would hope that you would welcome an opportunity for comments from our committee. One of our goals for this year was to define what in lieu payment is. For our committee, and we're also reviewing the off-site housing versus the on-site affordable housing. Now that we've have one transaction in place and a second one will be upon us here, we want to see, what the positive and negative effects are of that particular bylaw, how it's affecting housing.
Understood. I don't control any piece of this. All right. So, and I say I'm not being arrogant about it, but rather practical. It's right now a public process. And frankly, I was unaware of where they were in the process as well. I'll share with you the documentation I've received from Tom.
Okay.
And again, the steering committee's opinion on this is also extraordinarily useful. That's I think one of the things that Tom was looking for in sending this along was refinement. And again, inclusionary zoning has a great deal of impact on the labors that the steering committee puts out and the considerations that the trust takes into account. And so as a result, I think that comments coming from us, well thought through, well informed and refined by, as Tom Mead pointed out earlier, an understanding of what other communities do, is likely going to be given weight in the final draft. Rob Henry.
Yes, I was going to mention the thing that Tom already did about, if we're going to analyze this, and since we're really not aware of it, as to what other towns are doing, so I second that. On these kind of things, I mean, this is all lawyer speak. I'd like to have a layman's kind of review of what this says. you know, the inclusionary zoning and all the things there. I'm not quite sure any of us necessarily, unless everybody understands it better than I do. But I just think it might be good to have a discussion of what it was saying in a layman's terms, and what are the ramifications, what are we, you know, what are we supposed to get out of this thing? Or what is the town gonna get out of it, or, you know, whatever, instead of just stating all these lawyer speak words.
Yeah, we're pretty good at doing plain language explainers for town meeting. And this is something that could use that.
Is it
Okay.
okay? Oh, is it okay if he does?
I'm sorry, Rob, would you ask that once again? I couldn't make it out.
Dave said he could do some explaining on this. Is it okay if he does that at this time?
I think, David, correct me if I'm wrong,
No.
but I think your comment was that the town generally does a good job.
Yes.
at plain English explaining.
No, Rob, I'm with you. I am not an attorney. I would like someone to do a plain language
Oh,
explainer.
okay, you're just agreeing with me. Okay, thanks.
Hey, man, I went to state school. I need all the help I can get.
I mean, for us to review this in this kind of language is, you know, first of all, we can't come back on the same language. And I'm not sure we, as I said, we don't understand it. We
Okay,
can't- We
fair
can't
enough.
make an intelligent analysis of it.
Cassandra, this is, I think, again, this is an item where we need, Karis to walk us through the plain English,
Exactly.
the plain language, of the statements in the draft. But having said that, let me step back for just a second. I am not an attorney either, but inclusionary zoning as a rule, is the language within your zoning bylaws that manages, effectively affordable housing components within the community itself. Inclusionary zoning is a very broad term, but ultimately what it comes down to is defining how the town will integrate affordable housing through the mass general laws into the local community. It's the interpretation that the community takes for affecting the state law. Okay, so that doesn't tell you much more, but effectively the language that we're looking at, or the language that the town adopts in this bylaw or the rewrite of the bylaw, has a great deal of control over what happens from that point forward. So as an example of a bylaw that's written that says we want inclusionary zoning to mean exactly that, the development will develop affordable housing units on site within the development as a first priority, second priority offsite to the extent practical, and the third priority is payment to get out of jail, payment in lieu. All right, that's an example, plain English, of what the current draft is proposing, and then it becomes up to us, if we're going to offer comments on that, is to understand how that works within the trust priorities, or as Paul Kears noted earlier, how that works within the steering committee's idea of what is most important to them as they look to promote projects around town. So I agree with you. I think we probably need a much greater and deeper interpretation than I'm giving here. And I want to defer to council on that, because frankly, their view on it, the nuances, et cetera, are going to be much more informed than ours are. So Cassandra, it's got to be on the next agenda. And if you folks want to get together prior to the next regularly scheduled meeting, then we can do that. It might be important enough to consider. Tom, question?
I know, I would just say, I don't know that we have to have another interim meeting about it. It would be great to have some stuff to review from the attorney. If the idea is we want to kind of, keep it moving, is maybe trade some paper in between meetings. And then take it up at the next regularly scheduled meeting, and that would, and then hopefully we could, be finalizing a decision actually at the next meeting. But that, again, means,
Okay.
I agree.
Forgive me, I'm just writing some notes. All right. I will, I'll get out a note, to Paris North, asking her for exactly that, a background review of inclusionary zoning, what it's intended to do. Pointing out that one of the things that we had asked for was a review of best practices by other communities. And along with that, sending along this draft. Okay, and asking her for a written response that can be distributed to each of you. Having said that, though, I still would like it if you think about it, maybe not from Rob in your case, or David in your case, both, not from the perspective of the specific language, but rather the objectives that are being proposed in the draft versus objectives that or maybe in line with, or versus objectives that you think are most important. Fair enough? Okay. All right, next item, project pipeline. Let's see, Paul, are you comfortable picking this up? I'm sorry, no, I take that back. Let me stop right there. Tom Mead and Rob Henry, Elm Street renovation update. Let's start with that.
So, haven't made a ton of headway in between meetings here. So I did have, we had some plumbing issues over there. We had those taken care of. I still have not been able to get a contractor through there for sort of like initial walkthrough scope of work. So I actually spoke with Rob about this yesterday. We're gonna, sort of work a little closer together on that and try to get it moving. So, but next step here is still to get that, to get a contractor through, identify even if it's on a really high level scope of work and rough total budget.
Okay, I recognize we're moving into busy season for contractors. Having said that, what would you estimate is the time frame for getting someone through there?
I mean, it's less about getting someone through there and how fast they can like actually turn around a scope. So, I would say, by next meeting, within a month, I can have the scope of work back.
Okay.
Can try to get it done sooner. But let's say, by our meeting in May, we'll have the initial look.
One of the keys on this thing is that we've got to find somebody. It's easy to get somebody to do a scope. It's going to be the execution of doing the project who we select them. And right now, what's going on in the industry of remodelers and all that is that some are busier than they really are. They think they're busy and all that, but there seems to be a trend the last year of people trying to, saying they'll take on a job, and then next thing you know, well, we can't do it until September, as an example. So we've got to get somebody who's going to be serious about working with us and doing what they say they're going to do. So Tom and I, as you said, we talked yesterday. We had to try to really nail this thing down. So we get anybody to come in and go through it. I mean, that'll be helpful to get somebody, but then the person that we select, we've got to make sure that they are going to execute in a timely manner.
Do you have a punch list already of people that you're planning on approaching?
I do. I mean, I have two guys that, they're the same guys in mind. It has been sort of, wrap up some other things that they're busy with. So two guys in particular, I think would be perfect for this job. There, you know, there's some level of, or both of them are quality contractors, and one of them is the, you know, tail end of his career and would be looking to do this, not make a ton of money at it, but help out. And the other guy is like, you know, has done sort of public works projects. So I need to get their attention, really. If I could get either one of those guys to step up, they would, you know, they would check the box for what Rob was talking about, which is they're not just gonna walk through, give us a scope, and then, you know, show up, do demo and, you know, walk for 2 months. So I think like on the front end, we can filter, you know, hopefully we won't even be talking to, you know, anybody we don't have real experience with. And so we can avoid those types of, once this ball gets rolling, the idea is to keep it rolling. Hopefully our work on the front end will ensure that.
Okay, Rob, I know it galls you to not see things move along, so I'm holding you to this one.
Well, Tom agrees with me on this, even though he's not quite as vocal about it. So I think
Yeah, no,
we're in the same place on it.
I understand. Look, here's we certainly do want to get it moving. As someone once said to me, good, fast, and cheap, pick any two.
Well, there's an old saying, and I think it comes out of the military, you know, proper planning pays off, PPO. And that's what we have to do with this thing. And, you know, the last month, of course, I was away and we didn't do as much as we wanted to do, so.
Well, yeah, and I again, we're looking at it, it's current, or it's April meeting, we're gonna be moving into the May meeting. So we're gonna, let's assume that coming back into the May meeting, you've got a scope, you've got a rough budget, a rough idea of a budget. Is that
Yep.
fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Paul, can you give us a general overview of projects in the pipeline?
Sure. Thank you. We actually had our affordable housing meeting last night. And so we were gathering all of our updates, just to give you an update of where we are for all projects. The first one being 808 Jerusalem Road, which is the Habitat for Humanity property. As you know, that is underway with Habitat. Habitat had a public forum Monday night at the Wilcott Center from 6:30 to 7:30. And I'm not sure how they reached out to the community to participate in that forum, but our whole committee was there. And there were several people from Elder Affairs as I was at our board meeting Monday morning, so I wanted to promote that. And Justin, the PR guy for the town, had sent out an email. I'm not sure what his email list consists of, if they're just board members and committee members in the town or not, but there was no representation from the Housing Trust there.
Paul, I have to tell you, I have no word of it, but.
Right, that's what I figured, because we were trying to figure out the same, you know, issues when we were there. We're like, we know that at the library, they had the harbor meeting that was gonna draw a good crowd. But I don't think our word got out very well. So we're gonna work with Habitat to communicate better.
Yeah,
with the residents.
Hang on for just a second. Cassandra, had you received any word of it either? Or had you received any word of it, period?
I had gotten word of it probably a day or two before. I was not in attendance because I had to attend the CZM grant meeting that Paul referenced at the library.
Yeah, no, but the point is though, you heard about it just a day or two before. Anybody else get any word on it?
Not me, no.
Okay. No, I'm asking Paul because I mean, maybe we, that's not something I think we would have intentionally missed. Had we
Right.
known about it.
No, I don't disagree at all. We kind of mentioned that to them when they were there. There were 3 representatives from Habitat. So with that said, it was a good meeting. The abutters were there, which was probably the most important attendee. There was the abutters. they were very positive about it. They just wanted to know more information about it. So that went very, very well. The abutter actually is a gentleman and his wife, a young couple. He actually grew up in town, so he's familiar with the town. So all of that it was very, very positive. Just to let everyone know that South Shore Habitat for Humanity has an annual event that they do. They call it their gala, and this year they decided to have it at the Red Lion Inn. So it's going to be on May 11th, which is a Thursday night. And rather than a sit-down dinner, what they're doing is they're doing a cocktails and appetizers and silent auctions and maybe some live auctions and people speaking from time to time throughout the evening. So they're going to be doing that. So they're encouraging as many of us to attend as possible. What normally people from all of the whole South Shore will be attending Habitat. Their usual supporters will be there. They're asking that we get some good representation from our committees and folks in town. This gala does not raise money for 808 Jerusalem, but they are going to be promoting 808 Jerusalem. So that's where we are with that. I'll have to have Justin or Cassandra get you the information to where anyone could buy a ticket and attend. What they're doing is they're having that in the big barn area, the fundraiser, and then for the younger crowd, they're having a band in the cave, so they'll have plenty of people there for that.
Oh, hang on just a second. Ted Carr?
Yeah, so I have the link for the event, so I'll send it around to everybody. Paul, I'll send it to you if you can do. I did, Tanya and I were asked to offer a live auction item, so we've donated our home at Lake Winnipesaukee for the event, but we did ask the question about would it participate in Jerusalem Road. They have one section, I was told by the fundraiser, they do have one section of the evening where people can raise up their paddle for a fund to need sort of thing, and the fund to need, I was told, is 808 Jerusalem Road.
Okay, oh, good.
So, which is
Good.
which I thought was great. But I have the link. I'll send it around to everybody. But it looks to be a very nice evening.
Thank you, Ted. That'd be awesome. Yeah, we're working with a couple of coordinators right now with our committee. We meet with them. We have been meeting with them every month at minimum, and we have a subcommittee that's headed up by Mary Hines, who is working with them weekly. We're going to be going to the farmers market to promote it. We'll be going to Rotary, different places to help promote it in the community. So we're working that side of it. So that's all in process. So that's going well because we want the town to participate in this event because of a lot of reasons. One is, we made a concerted effort, 6-7 years ago to put together this committee. We made a bigger effort to recreate the trust and actually fund the trust. And then we moved CPC money into the trust, all for the purpose of developing housing. And this will be our first liquidity event, if you will, right? So it's our big first transaction. So we will have exercised a steering committee, a housing trust, transfer of land, building a home, and selling that home in perpetuity for affordable housing. So I'm most excited about having that complete transaction happen here in town. It'll be great for us because the next ones will be probably easier as we move forward. So we are going to be getting a table at Town Hall, outside the gym there. We'll have a table set up for Habitat so people can see it as they come in for Town Hall meeting on May 1st. So that'll be there. The other properties to give you an update on, the big one was CJC. He is fully operational on sewer, and so he had begun a little while ago getting tenants for his apartment. So he's got 20 units there. 10 of them are fully occupied. The first 5 that were occupied were the affordable housing units. So he
Really?
had high demand for that. So that worked out really well.
Good.
So he's well on his way. So he's kind of doing his thing, and we're grateful for that because that is the that is the one project that got us to the 10%. So now as we move on, there's a couple of other projects. So there's one Pleasant Street.
Excuse me, could I ask a
Um,
question before on this?
Yeah, Rob, if you can,
It's germane to the, what would the project Paul just talked about, that's all.
go ahead.
Is the, everything okay with the water situation there?
What was the question?
Is everything okay with the water hookup deal?
A water hookup for CJC?
If that was the problem beside the sewer there, the CJC.
Yeah, so he's all hooked up, right? So water and sewer.
So he's got 5 of the 10. Is there any kind of estimate of when they'll be able to get occupancy there?
So he has 10 out of the 20 occupied.
They're not living there.
So out of the 10, 5 of them are affordable housing. Those are already occupied.
They're already living there?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, because
so he's on the market. He's got a real
I know
estate.
he's got a market as a sign, I know all of that, but I didn't realize that they'd gone far enough to have people
Yeah.
living here already, so, okay, that's
They've
great.
got a CO.
Yeah, so he's
They've got a CO.
yeah, so he's rolling right ahead. So as
Okay,
the
thank
market
you.
as the market will bear, he'll fill those
Yeah.
apartments. So the next one is One Pleasant Street, which is I call it behind the barber shop. Some people call it behind the art center. That's 14 units. I'm not sure when his completion is, but it looks pretty good so far. To be completed definitely within the calendar year, I would think. So that'll be 14 units we get credit for because they're apartments. So we're excited about that. The next one that'll come online is the I forget the property address, but it's on South Main Street across from St. Anthony's Church, the old garage that burnt down.
Right.
So
Right.
John Chavo had put up a building there with 2 retail on the first floor and 3 apartments on the second floor. He was not required to put any affordable housing in, but he volunteered to put 1 unit in as affordable housing. And if you recall, the trust engaged with him to help him with a consultant to figure out how to interact with the state to get the tenant for the affordable housing. So I did speak with him about 2 weeks ago. He did say he would be requesting that help from you pretty soon as he's near completion on that property.
I think I'd have to go back and check our records, but the total is $15,000 in 3 stages. The first, I think we've already paid. The second, I believe, was a construction somehow comes to mind that we would relinquish another $5,000 during the construction period, and the third would be a certificate of occupancy.
So there are 2 other projects. One is no longer on the table, which was at the end of North Main Street. There was a property that was purchased. They were going to put in 22 units, but they kind of abandoned that at this point. The select board had to make some approvals that they were unwilling to do at the time. This is the last property in town right before the golf course across from the station. So they haven't returned in a year, so we just assume that project is abandoned. The second item that will be in front of us, which I would think would be sometime in 2024, maybe first or second quarter is my guess, is the gas station. I think it's 55 South Main, the gas station in the village. So they're going in front of the planning board tonight, I believe, for final approval. So what they have there is 12 apartments and retail. And they've decided to exercise the bylaw with the provision of finding 2 units offsite rather than onsite. So it's unfortunate for us, it's a business decision for them. But they, for the past year, we're trying to decide whether they are condominiums or apartments. So if they're condominiums, 2 would have to be affordable, and we only get credit for 2. Because they're apartments, there's going to be 12 of them. 2 would be deeded affordable. We get credit for all 12. if those two were on site. So now those two, they're opting not to have on site. They want to put them somewhere else in town, similar to what the Harbor Project did. So we will not get credit for the 12. We will only get credit for the 2 when they put them off site. So they're going in front of planning tonight for final approval. There's a paragraph in the approval that says, you know, they need to put something off site, and if they can't do something off site, then it has to be on site. And that's where that is. I don't know what mechanisms are in place for the planning board to confirm that they will be doing that, and what period of time they have to do that. It's still unclear to us what mechanisms are in place to see how that occurs. So that's what's in front of planning tonight. So that's the update for housing.
Okay, Ted.
So, first, Paul, thank you. Great summary. A couple of quick questions. I think we should have somebody participate in the planning meeting tonight. Like I get it, but I think if we can encourage them to think through how to encourage the builder to have on-site housing there, especially as we face more aggressive state rules around housing affordability, would be great. I'm also on the school committee and we meet tonight, so I can't do it. So if one of you could think about maybe getting on the planning meeting and offer a comment in that regard on our behalf, I think that would be great. And then I had sort of 2 comments on the so sorry, the 808 Jerusalem Road. Last year we had kind of stumbled through about lawn care over there. As we get into the growing season, we should think about how we want to keep that trimmed up over there while we are still in process with them. And then the second one was, I thought we had taken a vote, and just to share with Paul, we received a pass-through grant money from the movie company that filmed Fletch here. And we had taken a vote to offer that to Habitat for Humanity, but I'm not sure if we have handed it over. So we might think about, as an optic, as they get into their fundraiser, that we hand it over at the time of the gala as a gift from both Paul's group and ours, to say, hey, carry on, do your thing, because I thought it was like $5,000 or something, but I just wanted to bring that back up just to say, hey, I don't think we did anything on that yet.
That's terrific. They told us that they'd like to start in June through August on that. They already put up a sign on the property, coming soon. And so that's where they are so far.
Okay, yeah, so we sort of watched the grass grow over there last year, realizing it was probably our
Yeah.
responsibility to keep it trimmed. So if they're not digging in the dirt, we should just figure out a solution until they do.
So I can ask Brian Joyce, he'll be on, I have a meeting at 9:30 for sewer commission. Brian will be on. I can ask him if they can hit the property, because it's still, is it still owned by the town or no? Is it?
Yeah, Paul, a couple of things. First of all, Tom, you didn't see your hand up. No, trust owns it. It was transferred to the trust. It is our responsibility. And one question, again, if Habitat is looking to get rolling in June, well, that's great, but there's a lot of growth that happens between now and then. Paul, I hate to prevail upon you with this question, but I don't know anybody in this on this trust that's more connected to the community than you are. So I will ask you, do you have any sway with the local Boy Scouts, specifically the leader of Eagle Scouts?
We have talked to them in the past. We can certainly talk to them again. They
I don't mind talking
yeah.
Directly, but specifically, the request here would be to cut the lawn, mow the grass there weekly. If there's anybody in need of community work.
Sure. Yeah, I can reach out.
And it's not dismissive of Public Works. That would be, it'd be my second request, because Public Works is, it becomes an afterthought to them. I know we had to say after them. It's a small lot, it's out of the way. It's just, it's
Okay,
not on the regular route.
sure, I can ask him.
Yeah, and Tom Mead, you had your hand up?
Yeah, just, it looks like they cleaned up over there. They being Habitat, they did put a sign up. So I don't know, Paul, if you're in, if you're in contact with them anyways, just check with them. They may be planning to do that now, and
Maybe so.
all the rest is, unneeded. But now that they have a sign up, I'm not surprised if they would plan to take care of it themselves.
Well, we do own it, Paul. The obligation that we have is, of course, to transfer the land to them so they can develop it. So they may look at it as, at this point, as us getting involved in their project unnecessarily. So,
Okay, I'll
Okay.
certainly ask the question, sure.
all right. And that, Paul, does that wrap up the pipeline overview?
Sure, that's what I have. Any additional questions?
Ted Gar.
Yeah, so on Mill River, is it Mill Run, over there, we have another property. Is this the right category to talk about that?
I don't think so, Ted, because
Okay.
there is no project per se at this point.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'm sorry, Cassandra, please.
Just a point of clarification, I believe that 808 Jerusalem Road was transferred from the trust over to Habitat for Humanity back in the fall. So they are the owners now.
Well, damn it, they should take care of this.
So
Right,
mowing the
right,
lawn would
yeah,
not
yeah,
fall on your
I-
responsibility.
Cassandra, I'm sorry, I thought it was still contingent upon completion of the project, but I may be mistaken on that. So. Okay.
All right, I'll ask the tenant to cut the grass.
Well, just to be clear, and I want to, again, but for the record, it's clean. It's clean. They have cleaned it up. It looks good right now. So
Okay,
I think this may be a non-issue.
okay,
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Paul. Much
You're welcome.
appreciated.
thank you, appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Okay, so I'll see everyone at the gala on Thursday, the 11th.
I've got it.
You're there.
Yeah.
And we can all bid on Ted's house.
Please.
It's only
Yeah,
for a week. It's
Yeah,
not
what do
for-
you get 11 people in there, right? 12?
Absolutely.
Yep, all right, all
More
right,
the merrier.
that's a whole committee, off-site. Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is general, but there is a specific example. Each of you were distributed a letter from Chris Davis that expressed at the very least a frustration because the trust had agreed in a previous meeting to alert the folks at Heather Drive, and specifically Mr. Davis, because he's been the default spokesperson for that group. At the point where we would list the property for sale. The property was listed. No such communication was executed, though we had agreed to do so. I'm just going to make a statement, and Chris, I'm just going to leave it at this at the moment. All right, and the statement is very simply this. While we had requested that the communication go out to you, it wasn't done. And there was no follow-up or follow-through on our end to assure that it was done, and there can be no excuse for that other than the chairman offering our apology. And doing so with some humility, because in fact, it was not our intent to simply walk by it. Having said that, as you know, the property is listed for sale. Excuse me. At the moment, there has been activity On viewing the property, there are no offers currently. Okay. Having said that, as I said, the topic at hand is communication execution. And we need to do a better job on follow through. And I say this collectively, but I take responsibility for it. We need to do a better job with follow through. When we say we're going to communicate in a particular way, we need to get it done. And we need to have a mechanism for doing that now. Cindy and Ted, having put together, I'm sorry, along with David, putting together a communications plan. I'm going to ask you very simply to think through how we do this, and the execution part is the critical part. Do we use town resources? Do we use our own resources? And having said that, when I say our own resources, do we need to employ, a subcontractor to help us get communication outbound to the community in a timely fashion? There's nothing worse in my book than not following through on a word given, because you've only got your reputation to lean on in the end. And so I'm, as I said, in this case, this is an example of something I never want repeated. So long as I'm on the trust, I don't want to be a part of it. And it's not a finger of blame. As I said, the finger of blame falls squarely on my shoulders for not following through and making sure it was done. Cindy Matheson, I see your hand up.
Yes. I was aghast when I was looking through the minutes that thankfully Christina Bareford had put together, and realized that as I was looking back over them again, yes, we all agreed that this should happen. And as the one who's been taking the lead on the communication plan, my heart sank, and I'm just want to emphasize the apology to Mr. Davis and to the rest of the trust for not picking up on that. Anyway, I hope to never let it happen again as well. My question would be now, so if I had done the right thing at the time, it would have been to come back and raise the question, in what form and exactly what should we be communicating? For example, should we send out some sort of a message to all the abutters that we can find, or could we direct it to Mr. Davis as the spokesperson for the area? And then specifically, what information do we want to I mean, I know we could say that obviously we've contacted a realtor and the property is being put up for a listing. Is there more beyond that we need to be sure to carry forward?
No, it is, first of all, Cindy, thank you, but it's not, first of all, it is not again, this is not a blame.
I don't take it as that, but let me say, right. I just felt, oh my God, totally dropped the ball there.
I appreciate it. As you were describing, I read the note and realized, of course, that we hadn't done any such thing, and there's a feeling that grips me when I realize that I have, it was our responsibility, collectively mine in particular, to make sure it was done, and it wasn't done. So, having said that, in this particular case, what I believe we agreed to without reviewing tape was to be responsive to Mr. Davis's request that we very simply stay in touch and alert them when we were going to post the listing. And I say them, meaning in my interpretation, it was Mr. Davis. As we were advised in the past by counsel, once you own the property, if for example, one of Mr. Davis's neighbors decided to put their property up for sale, they'd be under no obligation to go talk to Chris or anybody else who abutted them. Having said that, it's not a legal obligation. It's one that we agreed to for purposes of better communication, more effective communication within the community. looking to, create and sustain good relations as we look to promote our, our need for affordable housing on a continuing basis. So leave it at that. I see Mr. Davis's hand up in that this is part of our regular agenda. Normally at this point, Mr. Davis, we wouldn't take commentary from the audience. Having said that, since the example at hand is this, I'll recognize you. If you wouldn't mind, please keep your commentary on this, to this end, to this item, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment about contacting neighbors. I concur with you. You're under no obligation to do it. I think it just would have been great, but that's really not kind of the issue I'm concerned with. If you want to keep conversation just execution of the communication plan, I really don't have much to say about that. I think it's more to the meat of the letter and whether there's a response to it or what the process is related to 30B, how the process for selling the property. Obviously, my concern all along here, and more specifically now that it's in your inventory, is getting it out of your inventory as quickly as possible. It doesn't seem to be that there's been any appreciation by the board of what the true value of the property is. The current price seems to make it more of a hunting expedition. It doesn't seem to be following 30B process for disposing of public properties. My main concern is if you do get an appropriate offer, whether it's mine or somebody else's, that there isn't a challenge to that offer. There's quite a bit of history or precedent for those type of challenges. So just more curious about the process you're moving forward with here. Are you following 30B? Do you feel that you don't have to? Have you spoken to council and have a sufficient comfort level that there won't be challenges to the process if offers are received and accepted for the property? But there's some basic standards I think that you would normally expect to see followed in the disposition of any property to make it efficient, and I don't see that here, but it doesn't mean that you guys aren't following the process in the background.
Thank you, Chris. To answer your questions directly, yes, we ask council for guidance before listing the property, and we're comfortable that we've done so in adherence with that advice. With respect to challenges, I've done this for 23 years. One thing I know for sure, if someone wants to challenge, they'll challenge. Whether or not there's merit in it, doesn't matter. Whether or not they anticipate success, that doesn't matter either. I think we missed the window for maximization on this piece of property. And I do believe we missed that window. Tom, I see your hand up. I do believe we missed that window in some part because of delay. Having said that, we have, and we intend to proceed, within the confines of the law as it applies to the trust, and likewise do so in a manner with which we hopefully can be proud of as part of a community. I'll leave it there. Tommy, you have a...
Yeah, I think we really needed to leave it at the communication discussion. As soon as we get into value of property and what we may or may not have done correctly, or any expectations of what might happen in the future, we're wandering into an area that should not be discussed in a public meeting. That's all I'll say about that.
I appreciate the comment. Having said that, I'm going to leave our comments as a board with those that have just delivered. Okay. Anything else on this particular item at the moment? Because if not, I have a request of the trust. Okay. The request that I have of the trust is to for our next regularly scheduled meeting to entertain from our communications subcommittee methods by which we can actually execute communication that we have advised that we would do. Now, whether or not that is specific to an individual, a group, or just our own initiatives. I think we need to get to that point. We've got a strategy that's been developed, and thankfully we've had an awful lot of hard work put forward on that by Ted, Cindy, and David. Now I think we have to get to the point where we can make sure that what we've agreed to communicate actually gets done. Cindy.
So toward that point, one of the, we will have minutes finally up to date and on the website. The other thing I wanted to request from you all is I have slides that show what our project in pipeline exists as, including where we stood with the properties at Heather Drive and Mill Lane. And I'd like to be able, if I can run them past Cassandra and you, perhaps Steve, to be sure that the notes that I have on there are up to date and accurate, especially after Mr. Kearse spoke. I'd like to include those on the Affordable Housing Trust website page connected to the town so that it is there for anyone who may be looking for it. This is our best option at the moment to get information up and readily available so that if people have questions about 808 Jerusalem or any of the projects, that it's easily readable and available to folks. So if I run that, if I update it and run it past you and Cassandra, do I have permission to ask Justin to put it up onto our website page?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Okay, thanks.
Okay, David Pfeiffer.
Hey, my crazy season at work ended yesterday, so I will have a lot more time to finish up the slides and get our Facebook page up to launch. Cindy will find some time to meet up here in the next week or so. And then we'll add these new items to the stuff we're working on.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the administrative piece. Next meeting is May 10th.
So no intent to recognize I get my hand raised, just a question on that matter. Or are we done?
Chris, what's the subject?
Well, it's related to communication. Should we anticipate a communication from the Affordable Housing Trust to the letter that I wrote addressing the specific questions? I know you like to do everything in executive session where it's not, publicly discussed, but should we anticipate a response?
You can anticipate a response, but we haven't written it.
Okay, great.
Okay.
We'll take it up elsewhere. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
You're quite welcome, Chris. Excuse me, administrative. Next meeting date, May 10th, which is just before the May 11th fundraiser. So keep that in mind. We have two items that we anticipate dealing with for next meeting date. One is being responsive to the inclusionary zoning interpretations. And the second, excuse me, execution of our communication items. Those two items will go on the agenda for certain. Approval of minutes. Cindy, I am going to defer to you on this item.
Okay. I'm give you my notes. So I went through all of the notes that Christine Berefer submitted. God bless her. She is truly a professional in this regard, and I'm so grateful that we were able to hire her work here. I had minor comments, everything except for occasional typo or misspelling. They're vastly exact and look beautiful. And correcting things should relate to the intent of the meetings more than anything, not just simple typos. The first one I had is for the July 13th meeting, page 2. It refers to the in the next steps heading. At the end of the second paragraph, it lists it as Heather Lane instead of Heather Drive property. I would just change it to Heather Drive. And on the August 10th, 2022 meetings, replace, looked like a line that's, when it was including who was participating, it had a Monica with a question mark line. Please replace that with Lynn Monaco. She was the resident or the abutter who was present. And then that's everything until our previous meeting, March 8th. I'd like to include a sentence. So Christine captured roughly the estimates that we were going to use money from the CPC developing 43 Elm Street. CPC approved 180,000 of the 250 that they had contingently approved at town meeting. And I wanted to include a sentence at the end that makes that clear. It's not just 60,000 plus 101,000 purchase price, that it would be the CPC voted to approve the requirement for 180,000 in total, which is a component of that 250,000. I sent this in an email to you, Steve, and to Cassandra. So the writing is more specific there. If we could use that to correct that portion of the minutes. And then my last one is, maybe I was mistaken. I was unclear about the Affordable Housing Trust responsibility to submit something to the town annual report. There was some discussion about it, and I was left with the impression that we were not obligated to do that. In the minutes, it says that we are obligated something to, as a public body, the trust must submit summary of its activities for the public into the town annual report, and that Cassandra would provide a timeline for submission. So I just wanted to be clear about that. Do we, or are we not required to submit something for annual report? And if not, we need to correct it.
My understanding from the town clerk is that we are not required to submit for an annual report at town meeting. Cassandra?
If I may, I think Christine is correct that during the meeting, it was discussed that you would have been responsible. So she probably wrote that based off of the recording. It wasn't until I went and talked to the town clerk and found out that you were not supposed to, but that was after the meeting. So she wouldn't have included it in the minutes.
No criticism of Christine. I just wanted to be sure it's accurate in the meetings that we post.
That becomes tricky because then you're changing what was said. So even though you are not responsible, that was found out after the meeting. And the minutes have to reflect what actually happened during the meeting. So I would recommend keeping it in there, even though the case is that you do not have to submit anything.
Yeah, the minutes reflect the discussion, but if they reflect something that in fact is not the case, it doesn't bind us.
Correct.
Right? That makes sense, Cindy?
Yep. Okay.
Right.
Again, I'm thinking from the communication standpoint, if someone were looking at this and then come back and say, wait, it says in your minutes, you need to do this.
Right. Right. But we can be misinformed and agree to misinformation.
So is there no way to add an addendum post meeting? It was determined that.
Well, interestingly enough, it's going to show up in these minutes.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay.
Tom?
Yeah, I might suggest that we did end that meeting asking Cassandra or somebody to, clarify for sure whether or not we had a report to make. And so you can just add that to the minutes to say, the discussion was, as a board, we think we have to do this, but, planning staff, we're going to confirm one way or the other. That discussion did happen. And it's less, I think what Cindy's trying to avoid is like, if somebody reads these minutes and not the following months, it looks like we're required to do this. So just tack that little add on, and I think we addressed it.
Understood. If it does in fact reflect the conversation, and forgive me guys, but I think I'm the oldest in the group, and maybe Rob and I are challenging each other, but my memory is not as clear as Tom's is. If that discussion actually did take place, I mean, it's that adding it to the minutes because it actually happened within the meeting is legitimate. taking out that was the March minutes,
Right.
taking out the March minutes. Let's, if you don't mind, let's pull those aside. What I hear is a motion to approve with minor amendments those minutes from January 2022 meeting through February 2023 minutes inclusive. That's
I
a mo-
move to approve those.
yes, that's the motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Second.
second it.
All right, to be clear, we're voting to approve March 2022 minutes through February 2023
Yeah.
minutes, inclusive with modest edits for clarification. We are not voting for the March 2023 minutes, which need to be further revised. Is that?
So
is that
just to
correct?
restate, January of 2022 through February of 2023.
Did I misstate that
Inclusive.
already? Good heavens. Yes, January 19, 2022 through February 8th, 2023. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 separate meeting minutes. We in agreement?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, so that is the motion. Do I have a second?
second,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, I'm
Aye.
sorry, forgive me, we've got to do it by roll call. Rob Henry,
Rob Henry, aye.
all right, Tom Mead,
I'll meet, aye.
Ted Carr,
Ted Carr, aye.
David Pfeiffer,
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Cindy,
Cindy Mathis and I.
Steve Gomer, aye. All right, meeting minutes are approved. We will consider March 2023 meeting minutes at our next meeting.
A very
All right.
special thank you to Cindy very much for shepherding this through. Thank you so much.
Cindy, what Ted said times 10.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. And do we have an invoice from Christine yet for all the work she's put in?
Yes, so we've received an invoice for most of those minutes. The total invoice is $800. I've set and ready to send it up to accounting to get her paid, pending your approval.
Can we make that approval?
Well, actually, this comes up, just to be clear, this will come up under topics not anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Can I have a motion?
I motion to approve the invoice for Christine Bareford's exceptionally professional work.
Second,
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's go through the roll call once again. Rob Henry,
Rob Henry, aye.
Tom Mead,
I'll meet, aye.
Ted Carr,
Ted Carr, aye.
David Pfeiffer,
David Pfeiffer, aye.
Cindy Matheson.
Cindy Mathis and I.
All right. Okay, I do have one item I'd like to bring up, Tom Mead. I don't mean to bushwhack you with this, but I want to let you know, Tom has found that his professional schedule does not allow him enough time to focus thoroughly on the task at hand within the trust as well. And no one can expect that you compromise the well-being of your own business or your family. For each of us is a secondary passion. And it's with a great deal of sadness that for me, that Tom has indicated that he will not ask for reappointment in June. I can't quantify how much you brought to the conversation over these past 2 years, Tom, and or is it 3 years? I can't even recall.
Could be
And it'll be very sad. It'd be very sad for us to lose you. But I want to say thank you. More than
Thank you.
anything else, I want to thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting, but it's along the same lines. Steve, you owned the, communication mishap. One of the big things that made me sort of finalize this decision is is Elm Street. You know, Steve asked me last week for an update on Elm Street and I went, oh my God, I haven't gotten a contractor through there. So I just, it really is a combination. I call it a personal bandwidth issue, combination of, you know, stuff at home and work, you know, has my attention and I can't give this the attention that it really needs. So things stabilize. I'd like to throw my hat back in the ring. It's, you know, it's work I would like to do.
Look, we're better because of your participation. And that's the only way I know how to put it. And
Thank you.
I believe me, I do understand the limitations of bandwidth. So, and I think everybody here does as well. So thank you very much. We're going to milk every ounce of energy we can get from you.
Believe me, you'll get it all over the next 45 days.
All right. Having said that, I'm going to take us to the next agenda item because which should be relatively brief in executive session. So I motion that we enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, subsection 21, for permissible reason number 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting it may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and the chair does so declare.